Hello everyone. Today I've got a video that is primarily for the purpose of reviewing an in-depth review of the new addition to the Bath & Body Works Italian test collection of candles, Villa Bergamot. I'll do an in-depth review on that to start, as well as the notes within it. It is a fairly complex blend, so I want to sort of devote a nice chunk of time to that. And then also a few folks had asked for my opinion post-burning on the other 7 scents that were in the original release of the Italian collection. So I wanted to do an update on those. Some of my opinions did change on them, for the better, for the worse, or some not at all, after I burned them. So I've burned them all a bit. A few of them I've done more than the others. And so I'll go through towards the end of the video to give my second impressions and sort of my final word, I guess, on how I feel about those. Now, right now, I've had these for, I guess, going on maybe close to 2 months at this point. The original 7, not the Villa Bergamot. And it looks like this line will be releasing wide sometime in April. I think we heard maybe around April 22nd is when it will go wide. There will be body care and antibacterial as well with the home fragrance collection. There's been some conflicting reports as far as which scents are going wide. I believe now the general consensus is that Espresso Bar, Tuscan Herbs, Pizzeria, Limoncello, and Gelato will be going wide. I'm not sure about the Villa Bergamot. We've heard that Sicilian Orange and Bellini Cafe may have sort of failed and will just remain as test scents. But then some reports say that Sicilian Orange will be out and Pizzeria won't. So really at this point it's sort of anyone's guess, but it's a fairly safe bet to say that Espresso Bar and Tuscan Herbs and Limoncello will certainly have made the grade. Certainly Espresso Bar and Tuscan Herbs, because they were probably the most popular, along with Gelato, at the test stores. So those ones are pretty safe bets that they're going to be in the wide release collection. So I'll get into those in a few minutes, but first let's focus on this guy right here, Villa Bergamot. Now first I want to apologize, I've got sort of a boring background here. The sun is just kind of too bright today. I had to put the blinds down to do this video, otherwise it would have a lot of backlighting and you wouldn't really be able to see everything that I want you to be able to see. So I was really excited when we first heard about this. It was mentioned when the collection first was released in test stores, but it kind of was a mystery until it randomly popped into test stores the past week or so. Right now, unfortunately, it's only in the 4-ounce single-wick candles, and this, more than almost any other candle, I feel like is one that will really benefit from smelling it in the 3-wick. Some scents are kind of flat or basic enough that you can smell it in a 4-ounce and it smells the exact same, and you know what it's going to be like when you hit a 3-ounce or a 3-wick version of that. But this one it's pretty complex with a lot of sort of nuanced layers. So I think it's going to be much easier to get a true impression of it in the 3-wick. But I've done a lot of sniffing. I've waited. I've had this for almost a week now. I think maybe a week today, and I wanted to wait to sort of smell it a few times in different days to really get a true impression of it before I did this video. So first, let's take a look at it. So it's Villa Bergamot, which is just, that means home, I believe, in Italian. So it's, the home of Bergamot. The photo here, or maybe it's an animation, not exactly sure. It seems like it may be artwork as opposed to a photo. Sorry, a little shaky. Looks like it is a gate or entrance, perhaps, to a home. So that makes sense. The wax, and it's sort of like very subdued, kind of sophisticated colors, a little bit of blue, a little bit of orange, but mostly almost towards like a gray scale or black and white with sort of the wrought iron fence there. And the wax itself is basically a light gray. Maybe you could call it a taupe. Not really what I was expecting. I was, figuring bergamot, citrus, it might be something bright or orange or intensely colored, but they went a little more subdued and sophisticated with this, which I don't mind. So we look at this, and let's look at the notes. The notes read as follows. Aromatic bergamot, grown in the warm and sunny Calabria region of Italy, provided the inspiration for this elegant citrus blend that also includes lavender and geranium. So I read those before I sniffed it because I do like to try to have an idea of what I'm expecting going into it sometimes. And I was actually really excited because I love everything lavender. I love bergamot. I was excited, when I first heard of this candle in the first place. And geranium is a really interesting note. I think that people assume anytime they hear a flower, they assume it's just going to be floral or typical, a flowery scent. But smelling that, and what I know a little bit already about geranium, is that it's not so much your typical floral or a flowery scent like you would expect. I actually have a cologne that had iris and geranium as some of the base notes or the main notes in the scent, and it was in no way a perfumey, powdery floral scent. It was very much the opposite of that, actually. And so it was kind of interesting that that would be geranium. So I was interested that, or kind of impressed that it had geranium in it as well, because that makes it sort of a complex and interesting blend, in my opinion. Before I do my sniff and talk about it, I wanted to talk a little bit about the notes. I figured these are 3 notes that really, when people hear them, of course most people know what lavender smells like, but most people, when they think bergamot, they just think citrus, and when they hear geranium, they just assume it's going to be floral. So since I'm really only reviewing this one candle in this video, and it is sort of a complex blend, I figured let's do a little research on those notes to see exactly what they are, so we know what we're getting into. So in that sense, this is more for the folks who like to sort of learn a little bit with me about the blends and the specific notes in the sense, the way that some people are really interested in the notes in perfumes and colognes and things like that. So bergamot, it's from the citrus bergamia tree, or bergamia tree, a small tree with blossoms during the winter. The juice of the fruit tastes, they say, less sour than a lemon, but more bitter than a grapefruit. So it's not something you would generally eat the fruit, plain on its own like that. The aroma is most commonly known for its use in Earl Grey tea. So Earl Grey tea is essentially black tea with oil of bergamot added to it. And they say also that the juice has been used in the Calabrian indigenous medicine to treat malaria years ago, I suppose. And of course, the essential oil is popular in many aromatherapy applications. And they say that the peel is used in aromatherapy to treat depression and also as a digestive aid. So of course, none of that is necessarily scientifically backed, but generally that's what it's used for. The oil, it's said to smell essentially a citrus-like fragrance, so not a full-on juicy citrus. And it has a distinctive spicy floral quality because it definitely has like sort of the blossom to it, where the neroli is the blossom of a citrus tree. Bergamot, it lends that, it's not just an orange juicy scent. It's got, again, the spiciness with a little bit of a floral scent to it. It's spicy, it's sweet. It blends well with many other things. They say it blends particularly well with jasmine, rosemary, sandalwood, sage, frankincense, ylang ylang, and vetiver, which we've seen many of those notes in other Bath & Body Works candles. But so bergamot, essentially, it is citrus, but it's much more of a mature citrus. So it's got, not even really orangey notes, more of a citrus, spicy, kind of, deep sort of floral back to it. And it can come off very intense and somewhat bitter, even depending how it's blended. So that's the main note we're looking at in this. You add in lavender, which of course most people know about. Lavender, you can actually check out, I have a video called All About Lavender from a little bit early on in my video making days here, where I did a really long, in-depth description of the history of lavender, its cultivation, its uses, what it smells like, the different types, as well as sort of my overview of a ton of lavender scented products that I had, from home fragrance to home products. So you can check that out if you're interested. But it's one of those things that's so incredibly hard to describe. Everyone, for the most part, knows what it's like, but some of the, adjectives used to describe it could be herbal, fresh, floral, astringent, flowery, powdery, intense, almost metallic. Usually has a bit of a camphor, intensity to it. Woodsy, sweet, herbaceous, pungent, little citrusy, little minty, and certainly floral. Very fresh, and it can go both directions. It can go the astringency, bright, intense freshness, or it can go a little more soft and powdery floral if they mix it with, say, vanilla or something like that. So, of course, it's really probably the most popular, aromatherapy scent in the world today, for the, basically. And then lastly, geranium. Now this is the one, in doing my research, that I was most sort of fascinated by. Geranium, interestingly enough, there are many different types of geraniums that are used in scent making, but primarily it's called a rose geranium that is the most common basic essential oil of geranium that you're going to find in home fragrance and in body fragrance for perfumes and colognes and things like that. Now, in my research here, it says, I have some notes. Forgive me, it's probably a little, a mix back and forth of information, but it says here it's generally kind of lemony and a green scent, very distinctive. It can smell almost rose-like, but oftentimes also very peppery. What I found very interesting is that the essential oil for geranium comes actually from the leaves of the flower, not the flower itself or its petals. So while in your head you think, oh, geranium, it's some pretty flower and it's the crushed petals, it's actually the leaves, which makes sense why we're getting more of a green, herbal, peppery scent from it as opposed to a bright floral. The basic geranium is, again, green, slightly peppery. They say that it tends to give a scent, a balanced herbal vibe, where it's crisp and green, but not kitchen greens, if that makes any sense. It sometimes will have a tangy sort of rose note to it, a little soapy in quality, sort of on the back end, or dry down if it's a perfume or fragrance. And one note that I found was that it's often used in fragrances because it creates a sense of richness or fullness without necessarily being incredibly aromatic on its own. That is to say that lavender and geranium can go well because lavender is very intense and very aromatic and bright and in your face, whereas the geranium kind of just works in the background to blend it all together to make the scent well-rounded and full and rich without being just too sort of bright fragrances that sort of pop in the front part of your nose. It's sort of like you've got the up part, you've got the side part, and it well rounds all together. So that's basically geranium. So I thought that was interesting. So when you go in this, don't think that you're going to get a true floral, because it's the leaves of a flower that are more green, peppery. So if we put this all together now, as we sort of mix the blend in our minds, we've got bergamot, so we're going to have a little bit of a citrus, but also sort of an intense bit of green. We've got the intenseness of the lavender, so it's got some heavy notes here. Now, when I smell it, I'm going to smell the lid first because it tends to capture, in my opinion, I think most people agree, that around the side of the lid here, you really do capture a good balance of the fragrance. I really, really love this. It's not what I expected. I thought it would be heavier in the bergamot and come off more citrus, but the same way that black pepper bergamot does not come off at all as a citrus scent. This could be sort of, I would almost call it, when I smell them, they don't smell similar, but there are notes in them that do match somewhat, but they don't exactly remind me of each other. You could almost maybe say, though, that black pepper bergamot is the brother to Villa Bergamot as the sister. So this is a little lighter. Not that one is particularly masculine and the other's super feminine, but they are sort of a balance between each other. Certainly very, this could be an aromatherapy scent. It's got a deepness to it. When you first smell it, it's easy just to take a whiff and think that you're just getting a cleaner scent or some sort of citrus in the bergamot. But the more you smell it, you really do get a balance. And when you hear that there is lavender in there, then it sort of jumps out in your mind that, oh wow, there is certainly a strong hit of lavender. But the interesting thing with this is, I think it's blended so well that you really can smell certainly all three. I'm sure, of course, there are more notes in here than are listed. They always include more than they tell us. But between at least the bergamot and the lavender, you can smell each of them when you're sort of looking for it in the scent. You can smell a pure, clean bergamot, and you can smell a pure, clean lavender, but one does not jump out at you as primary. And when you're smelling the other, it's kind of like the other fades to the background, which is interesting. I think that means that it's a really well-balanced and high-quality blend. They didn't, go too heavy on one and not the other. Let me take a smell of the actual candle here. I'll back up so we can have something to look at while I'm sniffing. Yeah, it's you. I would say the geranium. It's funny. Smelling the geranium, it does. There are parts of this that remind me of the cologne. I think it was Christian Dior Homme. Um, it was the fragrance name that had the geranium in it, and I do get a bit of that in this. But it's sort of like, if I'm trying to describe this, it really doesn't smell much like any other fragrance that Bath and Body Works has released, which makes me happy. It's not, um, a reiteration or a reformulation of a past scent. You've got the bergamot, but again, it's not the main note. It really does share the stage with. There's certainly lavender in there, a true lavender, not a powdery, not overly intense, but a really true lavender, almost like the lavender test scent that was out maybe a year ago. That was just lavender on its own. But there is that geranium, and it's kind of like the geranium kind of just wraps it all together. The same way that sometimes they'll throw in a sandalwood or a musk with a fragrance to sort of balance it and just kind of tie them all together, tie the other notes together. At least in my mind, the geranium is there, and you've got a little bit of pepperiness to this. It's a little sweet almost from the lavender, brings a little bit of a floral sweetness to it, but not not a sweet like a plumeria sweet. Don't not a true flowery sweet, but just an herbal sweetness. And the bergamot is just a brightness, like a heavy brightness. I would almost describe this as I think I mentioned in one of my very first videos that some of my favorite fragrances are fresh fragrances, and that this is sort of falls under the heavy fresh. So it's not a bright fresh necessarily. It's not something light. It's got a heaviness to it, but it's not an overpowering, cloying. It doesn't weigh you down. It really. It's because it's fresh. It's odd. It's very like holding two conflicting thoughts. It is heavy, but at the same time it's light and fresh. So it's kind of strange, but it's a really nice balance. Give it a chance. When you first sniff it, you might say, "Oh, it's boring. It's just it smells like cleaner to me." Because when I did smell it, I got a little hit of, "Oh, is there a cleaner kind of smell to it?" Which is strange because usually you only see that in like a lemon blend or a true sort of citrus blend. But the more I smell it, the more I really love it. It's sold out quickly, I think, in the test stores, at least the first shipment of them. So I think people are excited to try it out. And in the store, the sales associate I spoke with, a few of them seem to really enjoy it as well. So I think it will be a popular scent. I hope it goes wide. I hope we get it in a 3-wick soon. Because, yeah, it's just a really perfect. A lot of times in the summer and spring, you won't always be using a scent like this that's more aromatherapy or more of a sophisticated blend. But this one really works. It could truly be one of the few year-round scents because it's got enough weight to it that you could do it in the fall, but it's got enough lightness with the geranium and the lavender to bring it all together. So yeah, it's kind of hard to tell you exactly what it smells like since there's no reference point that it smells like other fragrances, but it is a true 3-part blend of bergamot, lavender, and geranium. So really, really love that. I hope you guys like it as well. It's probably I don't want to say my favorite in the collection yet until I get it in a 3-wick, but it's definitely a very welcome addition to this collection. So we're hitting a long video here already, so I'll kind of quickly run through these just to give you, again, a few people or folks asked my opinions on the Italian collection after I burned them, so I just figured if I was doing the Villa Bergamot video, I would throw this in as well. So you've got my 3 favorites on the top here: Espresso Bar, Tuscan Herbs, and Pizzeria, followed by sort of next in line, Limoncello and Gelato, and then finally the 2 that I don't like as much as the others, Bellini Cafe, and by far the weakest and worst, the one that I am happy if it does not go wide, Sicilian Orange. So just quickly, Espresso Bar kind of surprised me. In my video, I said it smelled like a shop that sells flavored coffees, almost like artificially flavored coffees, but you see I've burned it probably the most out of all of them. It really surprised me. Man, it's good. It's one of those fragrances that once you get used to the idea of it, it just is so great. I think it was actually one of the most popular, if not the most popular scents in test stores. They really couldn't keep the 3 wicks in stock. And it's nice to finally have a true coffee scent from Bath & Body Works that is authentic. And again, it's very much the espresso bar. It's a perfect morning fragrance for, Saturday or Sunday. Like as soon as you wake up early, light that. It wakes you up. It's got enough of the sort of sweetness from the vanilla cream or vanilla milk froth, but certainly heavy on the espresso bean itself as opposed to, a drip coffee. But just really, really great. I'll definitely be buying more of those. And it burns very well. And I'll say across the board for all of these candles, I got even pulls and burns on all of them. Granted, I've not burned through them completely, but so far so good from what I've got. The other one that's so interesting that I have to say that it's good. It's not something that I burn every day or feel like I'm in the mood to burn a lot. But Pizzeria, again, it's so strange that I appreciate it. I think it really, again, it smells like you're walking into a pizzeria. There's no cheese note. It doesn't smell like a slice of pizza. It's more about a little garlic, a little bit of the heavy oregano note, kind of like in a bad way, kind of like a junk food pizza, like a combo, or if Doritos ever made a pizza flavor, which I'm not sure if they did, but it leans in that direction because it's more like the crust with kind of like tomato powder, if that makes any sense. So it's a little strange, but it burned well and it smelled authentic when it was lit. So I like it on that, because of that. And then my absolute favorite right now is Tuscan Herbs. I'm a sucker for everything herbal, and this one, while it says Tuscan Herbs, could have just been called, Genovese basil, and that would have been fine by me. It burns fantastically. It's got great throw, and it really just, oh man, it's so good. I'm gonna have to light it after this. It smells like a sweet basil, a little bit of almost a floral to it. I would assume maybe like the blossom from a basil plant. They say that it has, what else do they say in here? That it has parsley and garden greens. Garden greens, sure, I guess. I don't get parsley so much, but there are really no other herbs. You don't get a sage, you don't get a rosemary, you don't get oregano. It is a sweet, not overly sweet, but a sweet, strong, appropriately balanced basil. So love that. Really, really love that. Next up, Limoncello, which at first I thought it was lemon gelato from a few years ago, but the more I smelled it, I burned it a few times. It burned very nicely. It really is a sugared lemon, so it's got a nice fresh lemon scent without being overly candy or overly cleaner or herbal or green, the way that lemons can sometimes blend and lend towards that way. It's very much, lemon dipped in large sugar crystals. So almost a candied lemon, but not like a lemon head, like a cheap candy, more like a candied lemon peel or lemon juice. So actually very nice. I'm not sure that it's exactly authentic to limoncello, but it's a very nice lemon scent. Kind of could take it or leave it, but I don't mind it, and I certainly will burn it. Next, this was the last one. I was holding on to burning this one. I actually had to burn it to do this video because I didn't think I was going to like it. It says gelato, but it really, to me, came off as very similar to the raspberry, the sweet macaron from the Paris collection just this past summer or fall. Super heavy on the raspberry, kind of like a cheap raspberry sweet tart or like a powdered Crystal Light drink or something. It really wasn't getting a creamy sweetness the way that you should on an ice cream, super creamy, fatty gelato. But, it kind of won me over a little bit when I burned it because I burned this, actually layered it. I had a couple of things going. I had green grass and spring going in 3 wicks. And I added this to sort of the blend. I put this in my kitchen. And in my living room where I had spring and green grass, I could smell gelato overpowering both of them. So that's kind of impressive because spring and green grass are both strong scents with a lot going on. But the raspberry or whatever was in this, it stood on its own, which impressed me. And I liked it more lit. It's almost got a sort of bubbly note to it, the way that you get in some of the Bellini scents, the cranberry pear Bellini, things like that. But it came out a little creamier when it was lit. So it does have a little bit of almost I would say more like a sherbet or sorbet, like a raspberry sorbet perhaps, as opposed to gelato. Because there's a little bit more creamy than I first thought. So still don't love it. I probably will only have this one, but I don't hate it. And I think I actually may like it a little bit more than Bellini Cafe. Now, Bellini Cafe, I thought I would really love it starting out because it reminded me sort of between a peach Bellini and also like a pink sangria scent, because it had the sugared fruits. The more I sniff it, I definitely do get a lot of the apple that they have listed in the notes. You've got apple, you've got sort of a sugared grape, so it leans almost towards like a sugary kind of bubblegum, like a grape bubblegum or something, because it does have sugared grapes. Some berries, I suppose, but nothing you can really pick out on their own. Maybe a little hit of citrus, so it is sort of like a drink, but because of that, it's just a little of this, a little of that. It's kind of generic. Again, they're calling it Bellini Cafe, not even a specific Bellini drink like peach or cranberry pear. So that I almost I have a second one because if it wasn't going to go wide, I wasn't sure if maybe I'd end up loving it. But it's kind of, you don't need it. It doesn't fill any specific void. So I kind of didn't care about it. And then finally, by far the worst, Sicilian Orange. I was kind of happy looking forward to it because Bath & Body Works hasn't done many orange scents. And I'm not a huge fan necessarily of orange, but there have been a few that I've smelled that once you smell them, they're like fantastic and really great. Yankees World Journeys collection has a Sicilian Orange that's much more authentic, more juicy. This is a fragrance that you expect to be bright, intense, tangy, juicy, in your face, maybe some lemon, some sweet Meyer lemon thrown in there. But it just falls flat. It smells orangey, but not bright and orange. Like the color of the wax kind of shows you what the scent is going to be. It's not bright, juicy, intense. It's just kind of muddled and subdued and not impressive. So this one is a big thumbs down. I hope it doesn't go wide because I'd rather you guys get the chance to smell something else from the collection. If I had to choose 5 from the original 7, I would certainly say Espresso Bar, Tuscan Herbs, Pizzeria, Limoncello, and Gelato out of the 7. But my 3 favorite are absolutely Tuscan Herbs, Villa Bergamot, and Espresso Bar, and throw in Pizzeria because it's so interesting. But certainly, top 3, Espresso, Tuscan, and Villa Bergamot, with Tuscan Herbs, it has to take the first place for me. But really, 3 fantastic scents of that collection. So we'll see what happens. It'll be interesting to see when they go wide. Again, we've heard April 22nd, but my guess is that either that could be wrong, or if it is the 22nd, oftentimes stores will start having fragrances trickle in and release them for sale a little bit early just because if they have them. Sometimes they will sell them to you. So that's about it for this collection. There were rumors of a dolce or dulce scent coming out that would be a sort of creamy caramel, but we haven't heard anything else about that, so I'd assume at this point that it's probably not happening. But we were surprised by the Villa Bergamot, so anything's possible. I hope this helps answer any questions you may have as we get ready to get the full wide release of the Italian collection. If you have any questions, feel free to hit me up below, and until next time, take care.